Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around doing something in the world, or rather manifesting a new world. I sometimes get a little, I don't want to say forgetful, but I just like that doing something. I know a lot of my listeners have heard me say it before and that I want to manifest a new world, and that's part of it too. But we're here and we're manifesting. I am in Denver, Colorado, my childhood home. So I think you might be able to hear some of the nature sounds outside. I've just come off of a wonderful birthday with family. And also we're coming off of a wonderful global time with the 2020, which is 2021 Olympics. And that inspired me to reach out to my current guest, who is an old college teammate. And I was just very happy. I was like, oh, wow, this is like inspiring. I know people who've done this before. And so my next guest, she is a 5-time Olympian in the sport of track and field. She represented the Bahamas and she competed in the long jump and was ranked as high as 5th in the world. In her 17-year career as a professional track and field athlete, she is a 2-time NCAA champion and was a 5-time All-American while at our alma mater, Stanford University. She also competed in a record 9 consecutive outdoor world championships. Yay! She is currently project and special events coordinator at the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences at California State University, Northridge, and recently added to her portfolio by creating a full-service home staging business, which is called Gold Medal Home Staging and Design. Jackie Edwards Flowers, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I've seen you, spoken to you,
I know,
connected with you. So it's kind of cool to be able to do that. You look the same.
Oh, you too.
Oh my goodness.
Right. It's so wonderful to, after so many years to just be like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like, hi
just
again.
Pick right back up.
Right. So let's jump right in. So tell us, where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
So I was born in Jamaica. I was born in Falmouth, Jamaica. I grew up in the Bahamas, in Nassau, Bahamas, and then I moved to the U.S. to come to college. Currently, I live in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And you asked me something else.
Your craft. What is your craft?
My craft is anything that involves creating beautiful spaces. So that is event planning at Cal State Northridge, and also now home staging for people getting ready to sell their homes.
Okay. I love that. Anything that creates beautiful spaces. Yeah. That's something that we all need, especially now, since we're in so many, confined spaces, open spaces, but just any space. Yeah. So let's go back and start with, at the beginning with sports. So when did you leave Jamaica and so are your parents Jamaican or are they Bahamian?
Yes, all my family is Jamaican, grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone's Jamaican.
Okay.
We moved to the Bahamas when I was 7.
Okay.
And in between, but I left Jamaica at 1. My dad was doing his graduate studies at Princeton. So we went for 3 years, Princeton University campus, living in graduate housing. And then we did 3 years in Turks and Caicos Islands. My dad's a pastor, so he went to a church in Turks and Caicos Islands, and then we moved to the Bahamas where he got assigned to a new church. And so we got there when I was 7 and stayed there all the way through when I left for Stanford at 17.
Interesting. Yep. So but you consider yourself a Bahamian?
I do. I have citizenship there. That's where I started my athletics career. That's the country I represented at all of the championships and Olympics that I competed in. So typically when I say I'm going home, I'm referring to the Bahamas, but home is also Jamaica, and home is where I am, but home is the Bahamas.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about how you came to be an athlete. How did track enter into your space?
So in the Caribbean, or in the Bahamas specifically at that time, they did not have organized sports for youth. Like I know here in the States, you see kids as young as 3 and 4, they're out playing pee-wee football and baseball and all these things. We didn't have that. I don't know if they have it now, but they certainly didn't have it when I was a child. So I did not get started in any sort of organized sports until I was around 11 or 12. And that was just at my school, where we had a grass track. Because at that time, the Bahamas, Nassau only had one main track. We now have two. But back then it was just one. But no one had a track at their school. So I remember I was just running at a little meet against other kids at the school on the grass track, where they mark it out with the white chalk. And the gentleman that our national stadium is named after just happened to be there. I think he had some family member or niece or some relative of his was competing. So he was there, and he happened to see me racing some other kids. So I don't know what it is that I did that stood out to him, but he approached me and asked me if I was training or if I had a coach or where my parents were, etc. And I was like, no, not training, not interested. I was extremely shy, beyond what is, like, as I think about it now, it was too much. I was extremely shy. So I had no interest really in being around adults. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in sports per se. I just didn't want to be in an environment where I knew I would be forced to have to engage with a bunch of people. So I said, thank you very much. No, thank you. But back then it was common to give an adult your parents' phone number if they asked for it. So I did, even though I wasn't really interested, because he asked me. So I gave it to him. And he reached out to my parents, and they said that I would come out to the track the following week. And I was mortified. And my mother took me out there and basically told me that I was going to try it for a year. She said, if this gentleman who the stadium is named after has said that you have some kind of talent that he sees, then you must have something that beyond what is normal. So you're going to go out there and you're going to try it for a year. And if you don't like it after a year, you can stop.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I cried every day for about 10 months straight. Every day when she would drive me out there, I would just be, and I would just cry tears and tears. And she would say, when you finish crying all those tears, dry your face and walk inside because you're going in.
Yeah.
And we basically had an agreement, because of my level of shyness, that in order for me to go in, she would sit in the stands so that I could see her while I was out there doing whatever it was that I was being asked to do. So she agreed to do that, and she sat out there every single day in all that Bahamas heat.
Right.
Yeah. And made sure that I at least had that sort of anchor.
Sure.
To give me the comfort that I needed. And it took about 10, 11, almost the whole year for me to get comfortable. And then finally, I sort of, I was making friends and starting to compete in some meets and finding success. So I it grew on me. So by the time I was 12, I was
a track girl.
Into it. Yeah.
You're officially a track girl.
That's pretty much how it started.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And so you were obviously a sprinter, but how did jumping come into the picture?
So I started out sprinting because that's what he saw me do. I also tried the high jump. That was the first field event that I tried. And I was pretty good. I don't know it in meters now, but back then at 12, I jumped 5'7", which was pretty good
especially at 12.
Yeah. But I was fairly tall for my age. I was already about 5'6", 5'7" at that age. So I was taller than the boys, and you probably know about that. Yeah. So, and then I don't know why it was suggested that I tried long jump, because what I had was speed and power, which are the two components of being a good long jumper. So someone had me go over and try the long jump. And I think the very first time I tried it, I jumped around 14 feet something with no idea of what it was that I was doing, where I was taking off from, just run and like hold your legs up. But while I was still 12 years old, I jumped 18.3.
Wow.
Which, yeah, at the time I couldn't appreciate what that meant. But that
solidified your place.
progression
Yeah.
was so significant that they're like, this is the event that you should probably be doing along with the sprinting.
Right.
So that's kind of how it was just by trying, like, oh, try this event, try that event. And the long jump really sort of stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 18.3 at 12?
Yeah. With no clue. Just like run down there really fast and hit the board as hard as you can. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, you're a natural, because when I don't know if I've ever spoken about this to my podcast audience. So I was a track and field athlete. I was also a jumper, not a long jumper. I was a pretty terrible long jumper, but I was pretty good at the triple jump. And so you just were effortless in every event, actually. Like, I don't really remember you ever being tired or winded. And so I totally get this professionalism of how you were able to have this longstanding career, because I was just like, Jackie just floats. Even when she's down the road, she just floats. And it was just always it just looked so easy. I mean, a track girl story is that there's always the big girls, which are just the older girls who are more experienced. And then there's the younger girls. So I was a freshman when you were a senior.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously look up to the senior athletes, but it was just like, wow, it just looks effortless. So that was always something that I strive to want to implement into my technique, is to be effortless, because I think that is what the stuff that champions are actually made of, is when you get to the point where it's less effort, it's all natural, and it just flows.
Right. And that comes with so much repetition.
Mm-hmm.
When you do something so many times over and over and over and over and over again, there comes a point when it flows from you without a lot of forethought. And then you can sort of hone in on technical things as opposed to nerves and all these other things that can sometimes hinder you. You can focus in on one or two things that'll separate you from being just pretty good to excelling. And it really was just by doing it over and over and again. And to your point about sort of being a natural at sports, that was like a good thing and a bad thing, because pretty much every sport I tried in high school, honestly, and as I think back to it and I talk with my kids about it, I don't know how I found the time to fit all these sports in, because I was pitcher on the softball team. I played field hockey for 5 years. I did equestrian for 3 years. I took piano for 8 years. I was on the swimming team. I obviously was on the track team. I was in the choir. I was national spelling bee champion.
Wow.
I was 2-time junior bowling champion. Like, I just tried all these things. I don't really know how I fit them in, but I always had the mindset of, if I put time into something, then I should be able to accomplish that thing, whatever it is.
Right.
So I always, it's the thing I try to convey to my boys, that the effort level is what I look for. Not so much the output and the outcome, but what level of effort are you putting in? And if you do that, chances are very high that if you give yourself no sort of safety net, which is what a lot of people do, like, oh, I wasn't trying that hard anyway. So then it doesn't matter if I didn't succeed. No, I was trying. And it was clear I didn't have any fear about saying that I was trying to be good. So I didn't leave myself any sort of fail safe. So if it didn't work out, it would not be because of a lack of effort. It would just be because that wasn't my thing, or I wasn't good enough, or whatever. But I would never have the regret of, like, what if I had just tried this little extra, tried a little more, or did a little more of this, or not. I didn't have that. I went all out in everything, and wherever it was, then that was it.
Right. So do you think that your first sport being track, breaking that shyness, did that build that in you? Because, for a year you were shy about it, and then you finally, by the time you were 12 and now you're, I guess, in junior high school at the time, had you then decided that you could break out of your shell, or you would try anything despite feeling shy?
Yeah, the shyness remained all the way. Like that, I was always like that. So I was already like that with my schoolwork.
Okay.
Like for instance, when I entered the spelling bee, I think the first year I did it. So I told my mother I wanted to enter the spelling bee. So she's like, okay, then we're going to get ready for the spelling bee. So we would like go through the dictionary, pages upon pages upon pages of words. And the first year I entered it, I came second.
Okay.
And I said, I know that I can win it. So we did it the following year, and I put even more time into it. And I knew, like, I even practiced what I would do when I won, like the facial expression. I was like, oh, you're going to go like this and like this. Because I was so sure that if I just put more effort in, I could do better.
Yeah.
So I was always like that. I was just like, I have more in me to give. And so I'm going to find that and put it out there. And so I always was like that. And the shyness it was a hindrance in a way that if whatever it was I was doing involved some sort of social aspect, that made it difficult. But that didn't take away from my willingness to sort of put 100% effort in to whatever it was.
Interesting. Yeah. So you are the stellar athlete, and then it comes time to decide where you're going to go for university. So how did you go about choosing that, particularly coming from the Caribbean to the United States? How did you make that transition, that move?
So at that time, there was no internet.
Yeah.
So we had not heard of Stanford at that time. Didn't know anything about it. And we knew we certainly knew that I wanted a track scholarship. Knew about Ivy League schools because I had mentioned my dad went to Princeton. So we knew about those schools, but they didn't offer athletic scholarships. So we had ruled out all Ivy League schools, and the schools that were interested were schools like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Nebraska, schools that you know of for track purposes, LSU. And then Brooks Johnson, our coach, reached out to me from Stanford, sent a bunch of mail and called a few times, and we didn't really respond because we had never heard of it, didn't know what it was, didn't know where. We knew it was in California, and it just sounded far, like a million miles away. Right. It turned out that one of the coaches was she coming to Stanford? I can't remember. She was at the University of Houston prior to coming to Stanford. And there was a gentleman who ended up winning the triple jump bronze medal in the Olympics in 1992. His name was Frank Rutherford. He was at Houston, and he told the coach who was coming to Stanford about me. And that's how Brooks found out about me. So they reached out. We didn't respond. It ended up Brooks ended up flying to Nassau because they were getting no response from us. So he flew out, came to my house, came to the track. And that was when we sort of had a full appreciation of what Stanford was and what it had to offer and how great of an institution it was, both athletically and academically. And that sort of fit me to the T, because I really was struggling with choosing a school that was so heavily focused on sports that didn't have the academic component. So once we realized what Stanford had to offer, we're like, that sounds like what we've been trying to find. So we flew out on the recruiting trip, and that was my first recruiting trip. And that was my only recruiting trip. I canceled all the other ones. Okay. Didn't realize how hard it was to get in. So had I not gotten in, that would have been a pie in the face, because I told all those other schools, like, I'm not coming there. I'm going to before Stanford. I'd even gotten in. So. Okay. Wow. Well, it was meant to be, clearly. Yeah. That was the place. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So you spend your early, I guess, before professional career in California at Stanford. And tell us about your first international competitive experience. So I had done some junior international competitions before college, and my family had traveled quite a bit just for vacation and stuff. So I was used to traveling. Got it. But my first 2 years at Stanford were not easy. let's say. I had this amazing high school career, was number one recruit and all these things. And then I got to Stanford and had trouble transitioning because I put on a lot of weight. The food that we eat in the Caribbean is very similar to probably the food that you might eat in different countries in Africa. It's very healthy, and you don't even realize it's healthy.
Yeah.
But that's just what you know, right? It's food from the earth. It's an animal. It's a fish. It's something all organic or all healthy, natural foods. And that's what I was used to eating. Didn't matter the quantity. It was the quality of the food that I was eating that was great. I had never had weight issues before. So I got to Stanford, started eating a bunch of dorm food and a bunch of stuff I shouldn't have been
American stuff, yeah.
And gained weight very quickly. So within a few months, I had put on like 20 something pounds, which as a jumper, that does not work.
Right.
Right. Brooks used to tell me all the time, and for those of you listening, Brooks was our head coach at Stanford University who took no punches and told you exactly what he thought,
he
thought it, how he thought it. He would tell me all the time that fat does not fly. Yeah. And that was correct. It didn't work. And I ended up having to have 2 knee surgeries at the end of my freshman year and at the end of beginning of my junior year. I had to have surgery done again because I was trying to jump with too much weight. And it is not natural to run down at maximum speed and try to take off on one leg. And I was triple jumping,
right,
which is even more pressure on your knees with the additional weight that I had. And so it was not working. I couldn't even jump what I had jumped in high school, my first 2 years at Stanford. And it reached the point where Brooks sort of gave me an ultimatum at the end of sophomore year before I had that second surgery. And he told me if I came back to school at that weight after the summer, that he would just, basically I would not be on the team. He said, keep your scholarship, go to class. We don't want to see you out here because you're damaging yourself. So I went to the nutritionist, got a whole meal plan, and went home that summer to the Bahamas. Had my mother sort of help me monitor what I was eating and how and when. Lost all the weight very naturally, but it took the entire summer to do it. And I came back to school like 26 pounds lighter than I had left. And that was what set me up for what would eventually be a successful professional career. Because had I not lost that weight, I would have just graduated, gone about my business. Right. Because I would have never known what other further potential I had. So my junior year came back. That year I improved in the long jump by 1.5 feet, which is significant for those people who know anything about jumping in 1 year. I had left school jumping, my furthest I think was 20 feet 5, and that year I jumped 21.10. And I went to my first outdoor world championships in Tokyo, Japan, and as a junior, and finished 10th in the world. So that was my first competition and my first sort of taste of seeing all these people that I had only seen on television. I saw Jackie Joyner-Kersee for the first time in person. And, I didn't even know enough to be afraid, which sort of helped me to make the finals at that championships. Because sometimes you're so young and you're so green, you don't even know that you're in an environment that you're supposed to be intimidated by. I was just like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Look at all these people. And by the time I qualified for my first Olympics the very next year, and I had just won NCAA championships, I was then nervous when I got to the Olympics because I had this greater expectation for myself because I had made the finals the previous year and was the youngest person in the finals. I think I was only 19. I now had this expectation that I was supposed to do something, and that sort of overwhelmed me at that first Olympics that I attended or competed in. So it was interesting the way that happened. And in fact, funny story, first Olympics, walking out onto the field, they have us in the 2 groups. If people who are listening don't know how it works, if let's say there's 50 jumpers at the Olympics, they split you into 2 groups. One group of 25, second group of 25, you jump at the same time, and the people with the top 12 distances after 3 jumps move on to the finals. So I just happened to be designated in the same group as Jackie Joyner-Kersee. I was in the order of jumpers ahead of her. So you walk out onto the field in the order that you're going to jump. So let's say I was jumper number 4 and she was jumper number 9. It's random.
Yeah.
So you're walking out, waving at the crowd. And I hear all the people in the crowd saying, Jackie, Jackie, Jackie. And I had just won NCs, right? So I'm thinking, oh, wow, it's all the way in Barcelona. And these people know that I won NCAA championships. Let me wave at the crowd. And I'm like waving and turning around. And then as I sort of turn almost like a 360, I see her waving. And instantly it's like, oh my God, these people are not talking to me. They don't know boo-hoo about me. And I like pulled my hand down and just was like, okay. And she saw me, and I'm sure she knew that I thought. So yeah, that was a little embarrassing.
Oh,
that was
how
one of my
funny.
first. Yeah.
So did you all eventually become friendly, seeing each other on the circuit?
She helped me a little, like that first World Championships, when I got out onto the field. The way you put your mark down for where you're going to jump was a little bit different from what I was accustomed to. I was just used to like putting down a piece of tape or my shoe or something. And I went to do that. And I think she saw me just kind of standing there looking like deer in the headlights because everyone else was taking these markers out of the basket. I didn't know what they were doing with it. Sure. And so she tapped me and was like, you got to get something out of that basket and put down on the runway. That's what you use for your marker. And I was like, oh. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she's always been very generous, very kind, very inspirational to me as I watched her throughout her career. Just not only because we had the same first name, we were both named after Jackie Kennedy Onassis. And I don't know, I just kind of liked watching the trajectory of her career and how she handled herself off the field, which to me was also important, right? I've always been a person who has felt that the way you carry yourself off of the field is just as important. And I've never been a fan of like rude, disrespectful people that feel that they are something special just because of a talent that honestly you were born with. Yes, you honed it and you trained and you worked your butt off to get to where, but there's a certain part of that you have nothing to do with. And I don't feel that there's any glory in walking around like head up in the clouds for something that you really had no control over at the onset. It's the same thing, honestly, in my opinion, with physical beauty. I don't understand how people who are born what other people may consider to be attractive walk around like acting like it's this huge accomplishment, like, oh, everyone should be lauding me and praising me for my beauty. Like, you didn't even do anything to earn that. That's just a blessing.
Right.
And you should move around in the world in that way, be gracious and not have this expectation that people should treat you some kind of way just because you're an attractive person. Like, okay, and then what?
Right.
Anyway,
it's
a whole other thing. It's just all goes in the same vein, though.
Yeah. And then what? It's true. So you had this, wonderful career as an athlete. And so you're getting towards an age where obviously, you can't be an athlete forever. So how did you start to envision your transition? What went through your head? How did you start to figure out, okay, I feel like I'm going to retire soon. How did you make that move?
I had always sort of wanted to prepare for life post-track. So while I was competing, I got a master's degree. It took a little longer than it probably should have because I was always getting on a plane, flying someplace.
Right.
But I was always mindful that I should be making sure that once my career is over, I'm ready to do something else. The problem was I wasn't sure what that thing should be. So I got a master's degree in sports psychology because first I went to law school. I started law school.
Oh, yes. I remember talking to you when you were in law school.
Yeah. I did not finish. I went to Temple University and I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I was training on the East Coast. I thought, okay, this makes perfect sense. So I'll do both while I can. And But I sort of knew that I didn't really want to be an attorney. It was just something that I had said I would do.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sort of going on that alone. And my brother was a doctor. I was going to be a lawyer. You know, it sounded good. But I didn't actually want to be an attorney. So, and my parents were paying for it. So I decided after the first year to not continue to have them waste their money just so I could have a degree that I would never use.
Right.
So I stopped. And then a few years later, still competing, I decided to get a master's degree in sports psychology because I was realizing how important the mental component of competing was. And I thought, oh, this could be useful, not just for myself, but beyond this, I could help other athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Then that was around my third Olympics, I finished that degree. But I was still competing well and still enjoying what I was doing. So kind of went on a little longer than I didn't really plan to do 5 Olympics. There's really not a need to do that. And sometimes I look back, I'm like, that was a little, okay. Could have stopped at like 3 or something. Anyway, because, you know, there is something to be said to be a 37-year-old, which is what I was at my last Olympics. And then you retire and then you go try to go in the workforce and you have no practical work experience.
Right.
Because who wants to hire? Like, that's cool. Yeah, you went to Stanford. Yeah, you could jump in sand, but what can you do for my company? And, you know, there's not a lot of people that want to hire someone if they don't know you personally and don't know that you have a brain in your head. They just sort of put you in the jock category, even if you went to Stanford. So it's not the easiest transition. And it's definitely not easy if you yourself are not sure what you want to do. So that was more, I tore my Achilles my career ended when I tore my Achilles. It was right around the time I was planning to retire anyway. So it wasn't this huge.
Wasn't career ending. Yeah.
It was obviously the rehab was difficult and just experiencing that was not fun, but it sort of snapped me into this reality of like, okay, what are you going to do? And I realized even though I'd gotten a degree, I still wasn't sure. I didn't know what I liked. I couldn't figure out what was going to give me the same motivation and passion and energy that sports did. Because for so long, I didn't need anybody to tell me in the morning, get up, go to the track, work out. That's what I wanted to do. I was passionate about it. It moved me. It excited me. And I couldn't quite figure out what else was going to do that for me. So I kind of just transitioned into personal training, not because it was some great passion of mine, but more so because it was an easy thing to do for me. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it. And did that for a little too long, just because I made pretty good money and I had flexibility in my schedule. And like I said, I liked it. I just didn't love it. I didn't really want to be a collegiate track coach because I could have done that, which is what a lot of athletes do. I knew I wanted to try something that was unrelated to sports because I feel like I have all these other talents that are not sports related. And a lot of times people will just sort of put you in a box and feel like that's all you can do. And I knew that I was a creative type person and it had to be something to do with that. I just didn't know what. So over the years, I've always been that person that's helped people, like if they moved into a new home, like help them to get their house put together, or if they were having an event, I could help them set up and make it look like there was, a lot of forethought and plan that went into it. That was always something that appealed to me. So I sort of realized that maybe this was where I needed to try and hone my craft or move into the next stage of my career. But again, I had no work experience. And who's going to hire you with, like, I just know how to do it. Trust me, I know how. So I started an event planning company and, did some work pro bono, there's some apps and stuff that you can use to get work. So I did that initially. And I figured I needed to basically create some kind of portfolio that I could present to people and show my work instead of just talking about it. Because, I mean, I could say I can do all kinds of stuff. If you can't show or prove to somebody, they don't want to spend their hard-earned money for an unproven quantity, right? So I did that. I got enough work under my belt to where I could go out to, because I knew I wanted a job first, like someone to hire me. So I could have regular work. And I liked the idea of 9 to 5. I know a lot of people are like, why would you want to transition from not having structure in your day to having someone tell you when to? It appealed to me. I wanted to have that kind of structure in my day. So I sent out a whole bunch of resumes and got a lot of no's. But the one great thing about being an athlete is you deal with rejection fairly well.
Yeah.
Better than most people.
Yeah.
Because you deal with failure all the time as an athlete. You're not walking around winning everything. And you learn how to not take things too personally and to just sort of keep pushing through it. So I was never really deterred. Sometimes I'd feel like disappointed or sad that, like, man, I just cannot get someone to appreciate what I feel are my talents. But I was not deterred, and I would just keep pushing forward until finally I knew the day would come when someone would give me an opportunity, and that happened. So I started working at an outlet mall that had lots and lots of events. I was their event coordinator.
Okay.
They were looking for someone with my type of skill set, even without a lot of experience. They liked the fact that I was an athlete because they knew what that meant. That I would be a diligent, hardworking
disciplined person.
Yeah. So that was sort of my inroads to event planning, and then that I worked there for a little while, and then I went on to get a position at Cal State Northridge, which is where I still am. That the dean of the college where I work in ran track at Notre Dame. Okay. So he can appreciate what that means also. Yeah. And it's almost like the right fit, right?
Sure.
He's a track guy. He could appreciate what it meant. He saw my work and pictures and portfolio work. So he was able to put both together.
Sure.
And appreciate what I could offer the department at Cal State Northridge. So that's how that came to be. That's a long-winded answer, but
it says it all. So let me put a pin on this new career. And, you know, with your background in sports psychology, and we've just come off the Olympics, and I guess one of the biggest headlines was Simone Biles, and you posted a few times on Facebook about, you know, the situation. What are your thoughts generally on how her taking a break and coming back, and how we, as you know, the general public can and should really start to think about the athlete mental health situation?
Right. So aside from my own master's degree in sports psychology, my husband is a sports psychologist. He has a PhD. He works for the Lakers. He works for San Francisco Giants. He has works at a few universities. So I have a keen insight into not just my own perspective, but the things that he works with professional athletes on all the time. He worked with numerous Olympians on this U.S. track team. And that's actually how I met him. He was the sports psychologist for the U.S. Olympic team in 2008. And he was a sports psychologist for their world championship team. So that's how I connected with him. So I have more conversations around sports psychology than probably the typical person.
Yeah.
And just having gone through my own struggles and having people give you their opinion about what you should be doing and what's in your best interest when you're telling them that what's in your best interest is something different. I feel that I could appreciate what Simone Biles was going through, even though I don't know anything about doing a flip or whatsoever. What I could understand, just as a person who had been a professional athlete, was the level of difficulty and the degree of danger that is involved in her sport far exceeded what was involved in my sport. So if I was having a bad day, or if my head was not in it for whatever reason, and trust and believe there are reasons that the outside world may not know of, that you're dealing with something something that significantly impacts your performance. And they may just see the result and be like, oh, Jackie sucked today. And they have no idea all this other stuff that you're dealing with that heavily impacts your performance. However, if I have a day like that and I still kind of push through as everybody wants you to do, and you'd want to as an athlete anyway, the worst thing that's going to happen to me is I'm going to have a horrible performance. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to break my neck. I'm not going to risk my life, literally. And this woman who has accomplished everything and that anyone could imagine in her sport at a degree and at a difficulty level that far exceeds what anyone else has done, is telling us all she cannot, in this moment, do what she needs to do. And I spoke with a friend who's actually a sports psychologist not that long ago, and she was saying, I've worked with gymnasts who've had the twisties, and they were able to just take out, components and make it a little easier so they can handle it. I'm like, but everybody's not the same.
Right.
And you can't say because this one person could do it, that this other person could do it. And these other people that you're working with are not Simone Biles. They're not doing 5 flips and 8 twists.
Exactly.
So I cannot imagine. I tried to use a long jump perspective. There's a 2.5 hitch long jump, and then there's a 1.5 hitch long jump, and then there's a hang long jump. Different techniques, all landing in the same space, give or take. If I was to go to the Olympics with a certain technique of jumping, I do 1.5. If someone told me that at the games, because of whatever you're dealing with, you should switch and do 2.5. Just do it at the games. Just that one time. Come on, man. That's impossible. You cannot unlearn something and learn something at that high level that quickly.
Right.
So what my friend had been saying was like, she should just take out a couple of the twists. Like, what? Really?
Right.
She should just, her timing is set up to execute at this level. So now you're telling her to, first of all, reduce the level of her output and then risk her well-being physically, like literally risk it so that we can all be appeased because she went out there and pushed through. Absolutely not. Like it irritated me so much that people felt that this woman made this decision so like it was cavalier, like, oh, I just don't want to lose.
Right.
Or I'm not at my best, so I'm just going to not compete. Like, who does that?
Yeah, exactly. And it was amazing to me
that people made it that simple.
Sure, exactly. And so I think that is the misunderstanding that people have because they think of sports as entertainment.
Right.
And so they're not understanding that, yes, people risk their lives. Even NFL players risk their lives. I mean, the long-term effects, I know former NFL players that have CTE, the post-traumatic, this is real. This is life-changing. So I think, the awareness, I appreciate her for that.
Absolutely.
And also that her team was better for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if it's a physical injury, people are all on your team. Oh, we're so sorry. We wish you would have been able to compete. But if someone's telling you that this thing that is affecting me equally as the level of the impact is as grave as something physical, but people are so anti you saying that. Right. And no one is saying that it should just revert to like, oh, my head hurts, I'm having a mental day, I'm not okay. No, nobody's saying that. Or I'm just sad, so I don't feel like competing. It's not. Most athletes who work that hard to accomplish something are not going to just like trick it off on the fact that they're not feeling it that day. Exactly. All that work that they put in, they're not going to just nullify it for some reason that is just like unimportant. It just I don't get it. I was thinking of you in triple jumping. Like, were you a double arm triple jumper?
I know. I was a single arm.
So then imagine if at the Olympics someone's saying, "Hey, Flo, today, forget that single arm. I need you today, just for today. Go ahead and do a double arm."
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
You want me to jump 4 feet? Like,
right. Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. It takes years to hone the specific skill that you're trying to execute. And then for someone to tell you, just change it up today.
Right. And still bring us a medal.
And still bring the gold. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that.
Right. So I
So
definitely appreciate that perspective. Yeah.
it
And I think
was,
people need to hear it.
I'm happy for her that she knew, we know ourselves better than everyone else. And in that moment, she was like, y'all can say what you want to say. I'm not out here. Because when she goes out there and twists and turns and breaks her necks and can't walk after that, everybody else who cheered her on to do it is going to go about their business.
Exactly.
Care less.
Exactly.
That she, has injured herself.
Exactly. Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah,
not there for that. Okay. So you got your first position as a event planner, and then that led to your current position. So you've lived in many places. Now this is where I kind of ask, like, why the where? So how did you come to be living and working and playing where you live now?
So I moved to LA to train for my last Olympics.
Okay.
I had been training back at Stanford, actually.
Okay.
And then the coach there was leaving, and so I had no further reason to be there. So I wanted to, for my last Olympics in 2008 and a couple of world championships that were coming up prior to 2008, work with Mike Powell, who's a record holder in men's long jump. He was down here at UCLA. So I moved down here to work with him.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up in LA. And then I, finished my career, ended up meeting my husband to be, I already knew him, but he lived in San Diego. He ended up getting a job with the LA Clippers. He moved to Los Angeles. So it just was kind of like, this is where
it was a little bit of work and a little bit of love.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So let's get into your latest endeavor, which is your latest entrepreneurial pursuit, which was a pandemic pivot.
Right.
So you're sitting at home, there are no events. And I know so many event planners that were just like, wow, having to do the Zoom thing or figure that out. That was a whole other piece. But having said that beautiful spaces is a big part of your inspiration, doing Zoom meetings and Zoom events, I'm sure was not going to cut it. So how did you decide and come to the gold medal prize that you now are nurturing?
So I was sitting around at home last year. We had been working from home from the university starting last year, March, and I would do some events on Zoom, but the legwork involved in doing a Zoom meeting is nowhere near what, it involves to do an in-person event. So I was finding myself with a lot of free time. And the kids were homeschooling, so I was basically like a teacher. And just not having, I didn't want to watch television all day. I didn't want to just kick my feet up and do nothing and receive my paycheck. That's cool to still keep a paycheck, but I like being busy.
Yeah.
So organically, it came up that a friend of ours was looking to sell a property. He was doing some real estate, and he was talking to my husband. His name's Ross. He was talking to Ross and saying to him that he needed to find someone to help him stage the home for sale. And Ross was like, oh, Jackie's pretty good at that stuff, so she could probably help you. So I spoke to him, and that didn't actually end up happening, but it gave me the idea, like, you know what, that's sort of, I love doing that kind of thing, and I know I can. So maybe that's something I could look into, because, and I was trying to think of something. I feel like if you're going to do a side hustle kind of thing, you should really enjoy it, because it shouldn't be like more work.
Yeah.
You should find some joy and passion in it. So for sure that did that for me. But I didn't really understand the business. Like, how do you market it? How do you find realtors? I didn't know a bunch of realtors. Other than the one that sold us the house we live in. So, but I really wanted to sort of understand how that industry worked. So as I do, because I wanted to know how to do it, I took a whole course, paid $1,000, took a course that was like 3 weeks long, so I could learn the verbiage, get the contract paperwork, all the terminology, so that if I was in a situation where I was speaking to someone, that I would sound knowledgeable and that I wouldn't just be like, hey, I know how to make your house look pretty.
Right.
So I did that. And in that course, I learned so much, and I got all the paperwork that I needed. I figured out I created my own website, which I am no website person, but I know what looks good and what doesn't. So
Yeah.
I was able to, took me a little time to do that. I got all my marketing materials together, and then they told you how to do all that SEO stuff to make
Yes.
I know nothing about it, but I know how to follow instructions. So
Yeah.
I type this word and do all the stuff. So turns out I show up on Google, right? So,
Right.
and I found this app. I had used the app before for event planning called Thumbtack.
Okay.
So I signed up on Thumbtack. I got all my stuff together and launched this home staging design and home staging company. And my first job was with the realtor that sold us this house. She had stopped by afterwards. She saw what I had done with the home. So she was like, oh, for sure, if I have a property. So she was actually having an event at her house. So it was kind of like an event planner type job, but also staging because she wanted stuff to stay permanently. Some of it would stay permanently. Some would be temporary for her event. So I did that. That was my first job. And then I signed up on Thumbtack. I needed pictures, right?
Yeah.
So I took pictures of my own home. I took pictures of her event. And that's kind of what I started with.
Okay.
And the first person that contacted me wanted staging done the very next day. And I was like, I have what? They just wanted, it was small. Thank goodness it was a small thing.
Yeah.
They just wanted a master bedroom and a patio. I had this really cool air mattress thing that blows up with the legs as well. It had the frame and the mattress.
Yeah.
And so that's what I used. And I ran out to Home Goods store and bought all this stuff. And that was my first job. And that was last year, I want to say October or something. And Friday, I finished my 30th home.
Wow.
So it just kind of took off. And every time I would do a home, I would, take pictures. So I had better and better and better pictures.
Yeah.
So I could put on my website. I could put on my Thumbtack profile.
Yeah.
And I've just been inundated with requests. So last week I took a little break actually because it was so much. I was getting so many offers to do homes that it was going on a way I didn't even know it would take off to that level.
Sure.
So I took a little break and then got back last week and started again and did 3 homes last week. In fact, that's why I was rushing around this morning because I had to destage a property this morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been fun. I love doing that.
Yeah.
I just want to pace myself and not do too much because I don't need to. I just want to enjoy making people's spaces look beautiful, but I don't want it to be a burden.
Right.
I feel like CSUN is my job, and this is, I say, my joy.
Yeah.
To have a little fun on the side.
Exactly. So just on the mechanics of staging, so do you have this now huge garage that you now store your?
So I have a couple storage units. They're not big. I just have accessories. So I don't want to rent. I don't want to own beds and couches and all this stuff. There's furniture companies that.
Oh, you rent from
stagers.
Sure.
Yeah. So they rent to regular people. They also rent to stagers. So their price points are such that you can rent from them.
Okay, got it.
And make your profit. So I have all the pretty stuff. I have the pillows, the bedding, the artwork.
Yeah.
The stuff you put in the bathroom, candles, plants, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I have a couple 10 by 10 storage units.
Sure.
And that's it.
Okay.
If it can't fit in there, then I'm not having it.
Right.
But I have enough stuff to do about 10 homes. Depending on the size, right? Some homes are bigger than others. But,
right.
But now I kind of have it down to a science as to how I prepare to do the homes and what I take with me. And I'm pretty good at just seeing the space, making sure I have everything and getting it done. But yeah, it's kind of fun. I don't know what the end part of this would be because once I have all this stuff now, it seems like, well, now I just have to keep going. And, you make more profit as you keep going because I don't have to keep rebuying all this stuff. I have the stuff now.
Exactly.
When I do a property, I already have everything. So my profit margin has gone up significantly.
Right.
So yeah, it's a good side hustle.
Yeah,
I will
it
say
sounds
that.
like it. And
If anybody out
fun.
there wants a nice side hustle and you like creating beautiful spaces,
Yeah.
it's a
And
good one.
so you do Los Angeles and the surrounding
I
areas.
kind of go, yeah, I've gone further than I planned to go because like there's one realtor, he's used me now like 3 times, and this last time he had me do a house that was like an hour away, which I really had no interest in doing. But
The
we've worked
client.
together now a few
Yeah.
times, and he trusts my work,
Sure.
and it's good to just sort of have that relationship. But
Yeah.
yeah, typically Los Angeles and surrounding areas.
Okay. And we know
Yeah.
Los Angeles is pretty big though.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good amount of territory.
Sure. So that website again will be in the show notes, folks. So and you can say it now, your website for the
The website is Gold Medal HSD for home staging and design. Goldmedalhsd.com.
Great. Wonderful. So let me ask you my Glocal Speak question. And so this is where I ask you to tell us, to share a word, phrase, or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and how you came to value it as Glocal Speak.
I think the phrase that one of the phrases, because I got a whole bunch of different kinds of stuff, but this one sort of translates no matter what the situation is. It's my mother used to say, like, where there's a will, there's a way.
Okay.
And I'm the person who wants to try all kinds of things. I don't want to just be pigeonholed into being this one thing. So I figure if I want to try something, even if I don't know how, like I don't know anything about creating a website. So I look it up and I find out how to create a website. And then people will contact me like, oh my gosh, your website looks so great. Who'd you have? And I'm like, look, I just looked it up myself and I figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
Same thing with the home staging. I know how to make a room look good, but I don't know how to get any clients. So then I take a class.
Yeah.
And they tell me how to do that. And so I follow that. I want to be in a spelling bee. Okay. How do you win the spelling bee? You go get a dictionary and learn a whole bunch of words.
Right.
You know what I mean? So whatever the thing is, there is a way to get that thing done.
Okay.
These locks that I have in my hair that I have never had locks before. And they grew out and I wanted to have them redone and I did not want to go back to the hairstylist. So I Googled, how do you redo the locks? Turns out it's not that hard to do.
Right.
And I've now done it 3 times.
There you go.
And every time people are like, oh my gosh, you got them redone. I'm like, yep, got them redone right in the house.
Yeah, right. I love that. That's a good one. Where there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah.
Right. Which dovetails to my next question, which is a mindset hack. So this is where I ask, what are some of your practices? What do you do to get your mind in another zone, to just hack it?
As all people do, I go through ups and downs and turnarounds and all kinds of stuff that people have to deal with, challenges. But what I don't do is I don't allow myself to dwell on something negative for some indeterminate amount of time. So if something's really upsetting for me, I'm going to give myself time to, whether it's if I need to grieve, if I need to be sad, if I need to be mad, but I'm not going to stay stuck on that thing. So I give myself the opportunity to deal with the emotions that come with it. And then, for some things, it may be a longer period of time, but I'm giving myself a cutoff date or cutoff time to then shift on to, how do I solve this problem? And if it's something like relationship wise, well, that might take a little longer because I might need a little more time to heal my wounds.
Right.
But I'm not going to just be in a year talking about the same thing that happened and how woe is me because here I am still doing the same nonsense I was doing that got me in that problem in the first place. It's the same thing with like work or with kids or whatever. I deal with that thing. And then my next thing is, how do I move on from this? What can I do? Because the doing of things helps me to get over it. So if it's something where like, oh, I'll talk about relationships again. Oh, it was a horrible breakup. Like that, everyone deals with that. I needed to do something. There was a relationship some years ago that I was just like, how do I get out of this cycle of sadness?
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to go be proactive. So I created this whole routine for myself. I would go to the beach, and then I would go to the library, and then I would go hit golf balls, which I know nothing about hitting golf balls. But it sort of gave me this space to be outside, and then I'd go to the pet shelter and walk dogs. And just by doing and being, like, making a plan for myself, it took me out of just dwelling on sadness or madness or whatever it is. So I'm always about that. What can I do?
Right.
And that always helps me to come out of whatever the thing is.
Wow, that's great. That's great advice. The doing of it is the transition.
Do something.
Mm-hmm. Do
instead
something.
Instead of just
dwelling
on it.
Right. So you like to work, you like to be busy, but what do you do in your me time? Are you a reader? Are you a watcher? Are you a listener?
I like to watch a little bit of trash TV.
Okay. What are your favorite trash shows?
Well, some of it's not trash, but I could watch HGTV. That's not trash TV.
Okay. No,
but I can watch HGTV like all day.
Sure.
And it gives me all kind of tips. However, I will watch The Bachelorette or Bachelor.
Yeah, those are kind of addicting.
It's like I get caught up, and my husband will walk in the room and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're still watching this. I'm like, hey man, go watch one of them Born Identity movies that you watched 1,000 times. So I'll watch that. I don't binge watch like Netflix and all that. I can't.
Okay.
I like to watch shows when they come on once a week. I'm not trying to sit for 10 hours and watch something back to back to back. Got it. I have watched Housewives of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I've seen a few seasons of that. Mm-hmm. But I do, back when you could go to the movies, one of my favorite things to do was to go to the movie theater. I can go by myself. I can go with my husband. I don't care who, with whom, without somebody. I love that experience. Just go in there and be quiet. I don't even care if no one else is in the theater. Yeah. I go and get the kids pack. Yeah. In the movie theater and just get away for 2 hours. Yeah. Love that. So I'm sort of missing that activity.
Okay. And what about reading? Are you more of a watcher? I
used to read far more. I find now with kids that, like, as soon as I start reading something, they come with all these questions, and then I don't get to finish. So I start all kinds of books, and I used to be a voracious, like I read a lot, and now I have books that I want to read. They just pile up.
Of course.
So I was reading one by T.D. Jakes. It's called Crushing. God Turns Pressure into Power. Okay. And it's just about how you turn like negative experiences into positive, which is kind of how I like to function. So, sometimes you see successful people, and success looks different to people. Yeah. What I'm talking about successful is individual. So whatever that looks like to that person. Sometimes you see a person and you just see the finished product and you think, oh man, look how easy they have it. People would say to me all the time, oh, you're so lucky to have competed in these games or to have gone to Stanford. I'm like, well, I mean, luck had something to do with genetics.
Sure. Exactly.
Right. But then it wasn't luck after that.
Right.
Because I put in some work. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with negative or bad experiences. You have to put some work in to get out of that. Unless you just are happy to be sad and mad all day. If you want to get out of that, then you got to do something. So I was reading that book. Okay. It sort of reinforces some thought patterns. And even someone like T.D. Jakes, people probably, don't realize all the stuff that people
That
go
has
through.
gone into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are nice tips. Those again will
Yeah.
be in the show notes. So you'll get to
Yeah.
choose those and look into those as well if you're interested, listeners. So, Jackie, thank you so much for your time. This has been so great catching up.
Thank you. It's been cool. I feel like we were just kicking it
I know.
like the other day, except it's been
I know, right?
I want to say the number of years.
I know, right?
Been
Right. I have a
wild.
reunion that was supposed to be last year that's now this
Yeah.
year. But yeah, it's been a while.
Can I ask, what do you do to maintain your physical presentation of yourself?
Okay, that's a good question. So I my runner's knees caught up to me last year before the pandemic. So before then I still ran, I would do, anywhere from 5 to 10 miles, a couple times a week. Yeah. And then runner's knees caught up. So and that was part of that was a combination of, when we were on a team and doing organized sports, we stretched every day.
Right.
So, years later, I'm stretching, I'm doing yoga and thinking, oh yeah, I stretch, it's great. But I hadn't been stretching enough. So I was running probably more on my joints than on my muscles. So I didn't have the strength that was good. And so that contributed to, so I've been rehabbing my knees for the last year plus. So I just started running again. And I'm being very ginger with myself, like running maybe once a week. And running in new shoes because I've discovered Ultras, which are a new brand.
What is it?
Ultra.
Oh.
Altra. They're 0 drops, which are good for me because I also have back challenges.
Okay.
So, but I traded running for walking, and so fortunately, that helps. So I walk instead of running, or when I don't run. And I think it's diet, more so diet. I mean, I do yoga. I love yoga. In 2017, I went to a yoga retreat in Goa. And that was like pretty life-changing in the sense that I really started to look at yoga less as a physical, but more of the holistic practice that it is. So I don't have to go hard in my yoga all the time. I just know that I just need to do a little bit a day, and it's fine.
I think that's where I made a mistake. I tried yoga one time when I was still competing, and I made the mistake to think that because I was so fit, that I could do anything athletic, and that's all I had known. If it was athletic, I can do it.
Right.
So I went to the doggone yoga class and took advanced class for the first, had never done anything and was like, oh, I'm going to just go right here. Almost died within 10 minutes. In the back, trembling and sweating and just like mortified as I'm looking at all the other people like, why are they so relaxed? Like they look so comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't go back because I was like, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. So I think I just made the mistake. I underestimated other people's ability to put time in and be great at something and thought I could just rock up in there and do it.
Because yoga is one that you do have to take time because you can overdo it. And that happened to me early. Like earlier, I did Bikram yoga because that was the athletic one and I injured my back. And so then, in transitioning, I had to realize, oh no, this doesn't take time because of that deep muscle stuff that you don't know that you have. I mean, there's trauma from 20, however many years of competing, or exercising really hard. So diet wise, I just am, I think that's a big part of it. Sleep. I definitely don't deprive myself of sleep. Like I try to get, my body generally gets up between 5:30 and 6 most days. So I don't always get up. If I went to bed at 2, I'm not going to get up, but I try to make sure to get at least like 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And so diet wise, I usually I'm like pesca vegan. So I eat fish on occasion, but mostly plant-based and no dairy and lots of water, obviously.
Lots of what?
Water.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of water. And I would just say that's kind of the
just eating sensibly.
Yeah. Exactly.
When I was single, it was easier.
Yes, it is. That's what I was going to say. Like
these children's
Yeah. Yeah.
I see the children's food in there and I'll be like, oh, let me just try
I'll just try
this
some.
thing, this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still doing well and still have abs and still, but it's just sometimes I'm like, man, like I work out a little bit more now than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
When I first retired, I didn't work out at all for like 2 years. Nothing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was just done. I'm like, I need a moment
A break,
to just. And the thing was, everything looked the same.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
No workouts and still holding it down.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I know that cannot last forever.
Yeah.
So I gradually started to do something, but I didn't really do that much when I was training people. Yeah. And it was really just me showing people, but I didn't really.
Okay, you didn't do the workout.
Do that much workout, but it still worked, right? Mm-hmm, but then, it's like the past 2 or 3 years is when I've noticed, like, no, you actually have to earn these muscles that you're trying to have.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Like, just hold on anymore.
Right, exactly. And that was the wake up call with the running. I was like, oh, okay, I got to build muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the pandemic has helped me with that because going into the office and being there all day, my time available for working out was minimal. And I would come home and try to do these little 7-minute workout things, and it was just not enough. And because of the pandemic, we got a whole bunch of like full workout situation going on in the garage, which is great because now I can just do it in there, and that has helped a lot.
Yeah. All right, listeners, so this has been another episode of Glocal Citizens. You can catch us with a new episode each and every Tuesday at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcasts. And those of you who listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any actually platform, give us a rating, helps people find us. And if you love this content, let me know, suggest a guest. We love to hear from you. So until next time, bye for now.